Welcome to a meeting from the Connect Centre. If you're joining us online or watching a recording, I hope you feel welcome as well. Welcome to those who are in the room. And this is the start of our summer programme. Now, if you look out through the window, you may doubt that it should be called that, but it is. The Connect Summer 23 programme starts today, and so for the next 8 Sundays, we will somewhat depart from the usual monthly rhythm of whole church gathering and mid-sized communities and engage in other activities together. So I just want to go through that summer programme with you just now so that you have heard it at least once. This has been shared, what's on the screen has been shared already and will be shared again and again, no doubt. So next Sunday, there is no meeting here at 10:30 because we're going to Port Ballymoney for our church day out. That's what it's been called. And we're going to have some baptisms. And I'm pleased to say that so far, Richard, who's here this morning, and Corbin, who's here this morning also, have indicated that they wish to be baptized. Okay, so if you want to be, now is your chance. And if you want to come and talk about what that means, please do so after we finish today. It's a bring and share picnic. Bring enough for yourself and for others so that those who forget, you have something to eat as well. That's Sunday the 9th. The following Sunday is Mission Feedback Day with some testimonies. So there will be people who will share who both participated in and led at the recent Alpha that we had. And also there are many things that happen here throughout the week that you may not know about. Hannah Barton is our community outreach worker, and she has facilitated many things on a weekly basis. And she is going to share a little bit about that, I hope. That's the 16th, Sunday the 23rd. We're going to be here again at 10:30, something like this, but there's going to be something entitled The History of the Bible in Our Own Language, and David Cheel is going to share and do a presentation, and hopefully you will catch something of the glory of what it is to read the thoughts of God in your own language. Talk a little bit about the history of that, the pressure, the persecution against those who wanted to facilitate that and bring this about, and just glory in. And as I talk to David about these things, that's what happens every time. My heart is full with the fact that I can open up a book and read the thoughts of God. Come on. In my own language. It's amazing. Sunday the 30th then is what we call table time. And we encourage people to get together in the morning for meals to get us close to table fellowship as is revealed in the Scripture. You can't eat with someone that you're not getting on that well with. Okay? And it's a good way to get to know others, isn't it? To get to know people over a meal. So we encourage people to get together in homes or wherever, and then we will meet here at 3 p.m. for church communion. Then on the 6th of August, it's Thanksgiving for Families Day. This is an opportunity for those who have had newborns in this last year or so to give thanks for that and to ask us as a church to help them to parent. However, there will also be some representatives from agencies that are assisting families where there are some problems. And someone from the Fostering Network and someone from Safe Families hopefully will be here as well. We have a lot to give thanks for in terms of families within the church, but not everybody experiences it as easy as some of us do. Okay, so we want to talk to that, speak to that issue as well. Then on the 13th, it's called Serving Sunday. This will be led by Chris Phillips and others, and all ages together can get involved to be a blessing within the local community. And that's on Sunday the 13th. More details will follow. Sunday the 20th is another Sunday when there will not be a 10:30 meeting here. Andy Rogers will be here in the evening to lead us in praise and worship for a while in the evening. So it's Sunday the 20th of August. And then on Sunday the 27th, it's Back to School Sunday. This is about enabling, empowering, asking God's blessing upon our children and students as they start another academic year. So please watch out for the details. We'll fill in the details week by week via a WhatsApp. And on that point, if I could have the next slide, great. So, I'm giving you a moment there to take out your phone and to push that number into it. If you want to get regular updates about what is happening, you will not be bombarded. But if you want to get regular updates, I think, and we think the easiest way is for you to be signed up to a WhatsApp broadcast. The number is 07549 342 980. Save it in your phone as a mobile, because you'll not get a WhatsApp otherwise. And send a message saying, I want to receive messages from Connect CF. That keeps us right. That keeps us right. And put your name, so we're not guessing, in the message. That would be great. And please note, a request to receive messages via WhatsApp broadcast does not mean that you will be added to a WhatsApp group with others. So you won't be hearing about people's sick budgies at 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, sure, we love WhatsApp groups. But there are some real offenders in here who... Come on. No names this week. But if you keep it up... The first item on the summer program for today is listed as Close of Markers of Discipleship series. Although such a subject never closes, it just goes on and on and on. And everything that is said from the front here, everything that's said in a teaching, should be enabling discipleship, formation into the likeness and the mission of Jesus. But in this series, which was called Markers of Discipleship, which means indicators of discipleship, we looked at a few themes such as stewardship, the freedom of owning nothing but stewarding everything, stewarding it via generosity, charity, and godly consumption. Stewardship, the freedom of owning nothing and stewarding everything. Then we had hospitality, which was somebody calling me, which was the goodness of the Lord, the good news that the Lord has opened up his table to us, and therefore we open up our table to others. And we heard about the transforming power that a welcome can have. If you cast your mind back to some of the talks in November, the transforming power on a life that a welcome can have. And then we looked at mission, the idea that we are called by Jesus and to him in order to be sent from him on a mission, and to work that out where we work. Sometimes we get the opportunity to go and do specific things, perhaps overseas or whatever, but really this is about being sent into our everyday to work out the mission of God that he has called us into where we do our work. And worship, the understanding that both corporate gatherings like this and personal and private devotion are essential to fuel and sustain a life of discipleship unto Jesus. Both are necessary. I quoted someone else when I was speaking on one of these ideas around corporate worship, and they said that when they asked the question, can you be a disciple of Jesus without the church? What do you think about that question? Can you be a disciple of Jesus without the church? And I think an answer is maybe. But your children probably won't, and your grandchildren definitely won't. And I think there's a lot in that statement about communicating the faith through this means of grace that God has given us. God has given us the church. So my question is, when you heard the teachings around stewardship, around hospitality, around mission, around worship, what did you hear? What did you hear? The question is, have you listened to what you've heard? How do you know? How do you know that you've listened? And how do others know that you've listened? The question is, what are we hearing? How do we know that we've actually heard it? And how do others know that we've actually heard it? I was sitting with some people on our discipleship timetable. Some of you know that I serve at CFC in Armoy, and I was sitting at the end of a term with people who had received a lot of teaching. And I just realized these people don't need to hear another thing, and neither do I. I don't need another teaching. I don't need another podcast. I don't need another book. I don't need another sermon. I already have heard enough to completely and utterly transform my life. Now, thankfully, I'm going to get more. And the truth is, we don't know it all, and there is much more to know. How can you know all that there is to know of God? There's so much more to know. But the truth also is that I already know enough because what I've heard to completely transform my heart. But the question is, have I listened? Have I listened carefully enough? And that is why, as I said, draw a close to this series. What I am not doing is saying, oh, well, we've looked at those things. Now let's tick the box and move on. Let's move on to the next thing. That would be terrible. That would be a travesty. And that's what we do sometimes. It's about information, 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 and no real impartation of truth because of how we have heard but not listened and not acted upon what we already know. Here's a question that I have been asked a few times recently. How's the church doing? Or how's the church going? I don't know why. I've been asked this, I think maybe, 6, 8 times recently. And I've found my answers going something like this. I don't know. It's far too early to say. It's far too early to say. Or I've answered this way, ask me in 5 years. And even that, even then, the answer may be far, far too soon. I know that the numbers and the activities have increased a bit, but I don't know how many disciples we're making. How could you count that? How can you measure discipleship? I will say this, that good root will equal good fruit. It's just going to take a bit of time to test the fruit. And bad root will equal bad root. Bad root will equal bad fruit. It's just going to take a bit of time to test the fruit. And what are the metrics of church growth and church success anyway? A question that I wouldn't say haunts me. No, that's not correct. A question that troubles me. Is discipleship unto Jesus the outcome and the outworking of what we are doing as a church? Are people actually being formed into the likeness of Jesus and into the mission of Jesus? That's a huge question. In fact, it's not the only question, but it's right up there with the only questions. I'm not going to talk very much longer this morning. I don't even have 3 points. Recently, I had the absolute privilege of taking the Christian Heritage London tour. If you ask me about it, I'll tell you at length. And that was the second time that I've had the privilege of doing it. It was excellent. Ask Ezra what he thinks of it for another perspective. The amazing Ben Virgo organizes and leads these tours. And on the most recent tour, Ben referenced a Puritan preacher called Richard Baxter, who had 60 application points in one sermon. Okay, so we're 60 points. Think about that. I'm not going to give even 3 points this morning, but I want us to read some scriptures and then just leave space for response. We're not going to rush to the finish line this morning. There isn't a finish line, but you know what I mean. Because we've heard a lot of stuff. This is the kind of our end of year. Then we try to have a break during the summer to make it a little bit less busy for volunteers. It's hard to do that. There's minimal things that need done. I'm looking at a few volunteers that the summer gets busier for. Think about them. And then we start up again in September. We're going to go through the book of Ephesians this September. Gilbert Lennox will come and do the introduction, hopefully. Some of you may know who Gilbert is. He was the teaching elder at Glen Abbey for a long time. And we're going to go through the book of Ephesians chapter by chapter, I guess. But we've already heard enough. We've had a lot of teaching this past year. And we need to make a response. And even if you didn't hear it in here, I am sure that you've read something or heard something, even this last week. I want you to think right now of the content that you took on board this past week. Bible reading or Bible reading plans or podcasts or something. Does it matter that you heard it? Deuteronomy 6:4 says this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Before you can love God, you have to hear. Hearing comes first. And the loving from the heart, from the soul, and with all your strength is just the response to what you hear, to what you have heard. Hear, O Israel. And then Jesus said in Luke 1:18, therefore consider carefully how you listen. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they think they have will be taken from them. That's why I said we're going to have the opportunity, I'm going to have the opportunity to get more knowledge based upon how carefully I've listened to what I've already heard. And if I don't listen carefully, I can only say what Jesus said. even what I have will be lost. Then let's read some things from James chapter 1. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. On that point, some will say, oh, Jesus got angry and this is a righteous anger. I trust Jesus to get angry. I don't trust you to get angry. I don't trust me to get angry. I do not trust myself when I am angry. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and with meekness, that says humbly, but it's the same thing, there's something more to meekness, and with meekness accept the word planted in you, which can save you. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. I used to be concerned about others deceiving me. I'm not as concerned anymore because I've read these scriptures. I can deceive myself. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom or liberty and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. The promise here, they will be blessed in what they do. The way to remember what you are hearing, the way to truly listen, and I've been talking about listening. I think you can interchange those hear and listen there on those slides, but nevertheless, hear and then listen on purpose. But the next step to truly remember what you've heard is to act on it, is to take action. The way to remember what you have heard, the way to prove or evidence or manifest that you are listening is that you take action. Further on in James, you can read that real faith must be demonstrated by action. It's James 2:14-26. I'm not going to read it now. We are not saved by our actions. We are saved for action. Someone else's action saved me. Someone else's action, someone else's obedience has saved you. Your obedience has not saved you. Your obedience cannot save you. Someone else's obedience saved you. His obedience. And we are not saved by our actions. We are not saved by obedience. But we are saved for action, and we are saved for obedience. As I've already said, in the autumn of this year, we will be slowly going through the book of Ephesians. But let's dip into Ephesians 2 just. Ephesians 2, 8-10, for it complements this James passage so well. James 2:8, for by grace, for by God's favor, Are you saved through faith, and that not of yourselves? It's the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. But it continues. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Do you ever pray to have the good works that have been prearranged for you to do to be revealed to you? To walk in the good works? The word workmanship, there's the word poema. We get the word poem from it. It's a work of art. It's the work of an artisan. You are a piece of art. And you're created in Christ Jesus for good works. What are those good works? Are you excited about those good works that you can get to do? You don't have to do them. You get to do them. We are saved by grace through faith, which is demonstrated or displayed by action. So, first of all, we hear. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the rhema of Christ, the word, the breathed word of Christ. We hear. Then we listen. We listen carefully, said Jesus. And then we act. And this is the way it works. We act in the confidence that God will act with us. We hear, we listen, and then we act. But we act in the confidence that God will act with us in that action. And this is how I think we should respond to all teaching, whatever the title, markers of discipleship or whatever, and however the content is arranged. And so as we have heard teaching on stewardship, on hospitality, on mission and worship, let us not merely listen, but how are we going to act in the confidence that God will act with us? I am really bothered when teaching on discipleship leaves me with an overwhelming burden of, I must do better, I must try harder. It really bothers me because it's anti-grace. It's anti the gospel of grace. There's no good news in that sense. If you are leaving here on a Sunday morning with a I must do better, I must try harder mindset, feeling, we are not teaching you correctly. We are false teachers. It does not line up with the gospel of grace. Yes, to be a disciple of Jesus requires commitment and some kind of sacrifice. They are always necessary. But you're not left on your own with it. You're not left on your own to do it. It was great to have the guys last week from Elam, from Iran, the ministries that are working in Iran, and to hear stories again of martyrs. And did you ever listen to some of those testimonies? That even as they are making an ultimate sacrifice, they speak of having company, of having presence, of someone being with them in it. I think that sometimes those testimonies, but however, give us a kind of a get-out clause, because we know we are probably not, at least in the next year or two, going to have to make those kind of sacrifices, such as imprisonment or death. Probably not. But it could happen in our lifetime, sooner than we think, in our context. So we sometimes use those testimonies as kind of a get-out clause. There is commitment required. There is sacrifice required. To forgive someone who has hurt you requires sacrifice. To manifest the fruit of the Spirit and not always get your own way in a relationship, plus, plus, plus. There is sacrifice. To be part of a church, there is sacrifice. It's going to cost. But you're not in that on your own. The call to discipleship is a call to action. It is a call to commitment. It is a call to sacrifice. It is a call to activity. But we are invited to be yoked to someone who will work with us in that endeavor. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. The reason I brought this phone up here, and it's been going off and off and off, was to read Peterson's paraphrase. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Are you tired, worn out? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. And I'll show you how to take a real rest. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Are you weary, burdened? Come to me. I will refresh your life, for I am your oasis. We are called to obedience, but we're yoked to someone who perfectly obeyed. We are yoked to someone who perfectly obeyed. I have discipled some people who were in desperate need of transformation. They were, and are, some of them, bound by many sins. And sometimes they would protest, and the protest would go something like this. Oh, to follow Jesus is very hard. To go through with God is tough. And my response is this: how's your way working out? Think about it. There's someone in this room who many years ago I parroted the phrase, it costs to go through with God, and they sternly rebuked me and said, that's where you're wrong. It'll cost you far more not to go through with God. And they were right. We talk a lot about discipleship here because we're trying to contextualize the final words of Jesus. We're trying to contextualize it in our time and space. We're trying to do what he says. We're trying to do what he told us to do. We're not always getting it right. But hear this. In true discipleship, in all true discipleship, you are not left to try harder and to do better in your own efforts. You are invited to be yoked to the Lord Jesus, whose commands are not burdensome and they're not irksome. Some of you will know where that's from. And so when you hear about stewardship and generosity and charity and mission, and stay yoked up. Let's leave the final word to Jesus himself. What I want us to do is I'm going to read these words, and then we're going to just have a few moments of silence. It's not a time to share anything. Don't forget the spirit of the prophets, or subject to the prophets. You can share after this time of silence, but going to hear what he says. And then we're just going to sit together in silence for a few minutes. In Revelation 3:20, he said this. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, hear, listen, act. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him, and he with me.